Let's see what we got. We got Cash Money versus No Limit, the untold stories of New Orleans. For y'all who don't know, I am from New Orleans, Uptown, Hollywood, 17th. So this will be interesting. Let me see what he talking about. I don't even know who this is who run this page, so hopefully he is a real New Orleans native and he know what the fuck he talking about. Let's see.
Twice, so I figured it was only right to cover the city about an hour down the road. New Orleans, Louisiana. And although they're only an hour away, they are completely different. But in order for it to make sense, let's head all the way back to the start. New Orleans is one of the oldest cities in America, built in 1718. And from the start, it was a big melting pot of French, Spanish, West African, and Native people. Altogether, they became known as the Creoles. So if anyone from the area gets an ancestry test, it will most likely have some results you never expected. And if you're from New Orleans, chances are you have an uncle or grandparent who looks like Chris Broussard. Anyways, as the years went by, New Orleans quickly became one of the wealthiest cities in the world. That's because it was the entrance to the Mississippi River, which connected North America to the rest of the world. Ships would travel through New Orleans, which made it the biggest and most important port in the Western world. However, the native tribe warned the French and Spanish not to continue building New Orleans because it was on bad land. The story goes that they told them that the land will flood every few years and destroy whatever they built. Well, they were blinded by the wealth they were building and brushed off the warning. You'd think that they'd listen though, you know, it's not like the tribe had been living there for thousands of years or anything. Well, fast forward to the 20th century and New Orleans was a vibrant, happy, middle to upper class city. In fact, it had one of the lowest crime rates of all major US cities. But everything would change in the late 1960s. Once other forms of transportation like cars, trains, and airplanes were developed, there was no reason for New Orleans to exist anymore. And when the money stopped rolling in from the port, the underlying issues of New Orleans started to reveal themselves. The once prosperous city started becoming a very dark place, truly a shell of its former self. From 1968, New Orleans began getting worse every single year. Crime started rising, businesses closed their doors, and residents began fleeing the city in large numbers. And by 1973, New Orleans was officially America's most dangerous city. The roads stopped being paved, schools shut down, houses became abandoned, and the streets absolutely took control of the city. So let me break it all down. The city of New Orleans has 17 wards, which is pretty similar to the zones in Atlanta. Except in New Orleans, they actually play a factor in the streets. And in this video, we're gonna focus on the third ward, which is without a doubt the most legendary and active in the city. It all revolves around three projects: the Magnolia, the Calliope, and the Melf. And no, I'm not talking about Sonya Curry, so get your mind out of the gutter. Anyways, these are the three most dangerous and rundown projects in all of America, and they're all located in the same area. The third ward is an absolute mess where you always have to be on your 10 toes. And this environment breeds some of the biggest bosses in the country. Welcome to New Orleans. But before we get into it, let me run the intro. Now, technically, it should be pronounced Melpomene, but it's New Orleans. This is the smallest project out of the three. The way we pronounce our words and the way that it's spelled, it wouldn't be that.
Like, a lot of people still don't know how to pronounce Tchoupitoulas, because the way it's spelled, that bitch says something else. A lot of our streets, what we pronounce it and what other people pronounce it with proper English, it's not that.
Projects. And that takes us to the famous Calliope project. And again, it's supposed to be pronounced Calliope, but this is New Orleans. Well, the Calliope projects, also known as CP3, was always known as a wild, wild place. It consisted of 1,600 units covering 6 blocks. The rent, you won't believe this, $8 a month for a 1-bedroom and $22 a month for a 2-bedroom apartment. And you might be thinking, wow, that's a bargain, but honestly, I don't even think it's worth that. That's because the projects had not been maintained since 1941, and residents claimed that they were infested with roaches, rats, ants, and spiders. On top of this, many units had mold and rotting animals that stunk up the complex. But despite the alarming poverty in the Calliope, big money began funneling through the complex in the early 1980s. And I'm not sure if era hit any city harder than New Orleans, and that created some street millionaires. And in the Calliope, it happened to be a man by the name of Sam Clay, also known as Sam Scully. Sam Scully was a smart hustler, and he started off with $1 and flipped it into millions in just 3 years. And in New Orleans, being successful came down to two things: territory and
So how you got millions but you still stand in the projects? I don't get that. Same thing Birdman used to say, talking about I already had millions of dollars and da da da. How you had millions of dollars but you stand in the project? Somebody help me understand that.
Takeover. In order to make the most money, you had to be able to post up on more blocks, and that's how you increased your sales. But that was a dangerous game because once you cross into another project, there's no telling what might happen. And this is when the rivalries begun. But some projects decided that joining together was better for business, and others decided that the lines needed to be drawn. And here's how it played out. The Melf and Calliope decided to work together, but the Magnolia was not going for it. That's because they were already making so much money in their own right. Specifically, two men by the name of Tonto and Cito. They played by the same rules as the
Monday.com, the opposite of any work platform we tried in the past. We tried other work management platforms, not naming names.
Calliope and Melf. And that's when the battle for the third ward began. But in order for it to make sense, we should focus on Sam Scully because he was the godfather of New Orleans. And for almost a decade, he was seen as untouchable. There's no way anyone would do anything to such a powerful man. At least that's what the Calliope thought. He had graduated from the projects and purchased a 5-bedroom house across New Orleans. This is where he could handle business in peace. And by the mid-1980s, he only came to the Calliope on occasion in order to make sure the operation was a well-oiled machine. In fact, he was so cautious that no one except his children were allowed to come in his house or to even know where he lived. On top of this, he dressed like a businessman every day in order to lay low. However, in 1987, he would lose his life.
Smartest shit, you hear me? Like, not looking like a fucking hoodlum drug dealer, you know what I'm saying? A nigga told me a long time ago when you're in the streets, man, look, for either look very professional or look like you got a family thing going on, you know what I'm saying? Soccer van, you know what I'm saying? Nothing flashy, you know what I'm saying?
While visiting the Calliope. This incident left the Calliope in shock. Although this was a common occurrence in the third ward, you never saw a boss like this go down. Rumors say that he had over $10 million stashed, which is over $25 million in today's money. However, his kids would deny this claim in an interview, which is pretty smart. But Scully's reputation wasn't all bad. You may feel how you feel about how he made his money, but you can't deny the dedication and hustle it took to reach success. He was known to look out for the kids in the neighborhood and pay them to stay out of the streets. He was even known to pay local kids who played sports in order to keep them on the right path. And one of those kids was Percy Miller, a local basketball star at Booker T. Washington High School. Percy was obviously smart and talented since a young age, and that's a big reason why Scully made sure he was on the right track. He dreamed of being successful like Scully, but wanted to achieve it in a better way. So he would sign a basketball scholarship with the University of Houston in 1988. But unfortunately, he tore his ACL during his freshman season and the school pulled his scholarship. But instead of returning to New Orleans, Percy decided to move to California, and not Los Angeles or San Francisco or even San Diego. Instead, he moved in with his mom who lived in the North Richmond housing projects. But he wasn't out there to play any games. He had his mind set on the music business. So with a $10,000 inheritance check from his grandfather, he opened a record store in the neighborhood. He named it No Limit Records, and when the local rappers heard about the store, they began selling their projects to him for consignment. One of those rappers was E40, and he and his uncle St. Charles began showing Percy the ropes of the independent hustle. So he took the knowledge and began his own career.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that P really started in Cali, you know what I'm saying? Niggas be thinking, see, like in New Orleans, we wasn't really on Master P or No Limit like that. We know about it and shit, but like we fuck with Cash Money, you know what I'm saying? At that time, like it was all about Cash Money. You could see Birdman, when everybody coming through in the little PT Cruisers, coming up Carrollton or coming through the projects, you know what I'm saying? Like you see them, you know what I'm saying? You ain't used to see P like that. You see C Murder. C Murder was always in the hood, you know what I'm saying? Mia X and I was down here. But you know, like, nigga wasn't fucking with no Master P like that. No disrespect, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, nigga definitely was Cash Money. Nah, when it came to No Limit, nigga was fucking with Soulja Slim, you know what I'm saying? So Soulja Slim was big down here. That's what put the light on Master P for us to be fucking with P. Cause Slim, it was Slim on No Limit, you know what I'm saying? And Mystical, I fuck with Mystical tough, you know what I'm saying? So
name of Master P. But although he already had the hustle
already popping outside of No Limit, you know what I'm saying? Mystical all the way back with Big Boy Records and shit. So
musical genius, he knew nothing about business. So he enrolled at Merritt Community College in Oakland. But he didn't go there for a degree, but just to take business classes to strengthen his knowledge. Well, while taking classes, he met a young producer named EA Ski. So together, Master P, E40, and EA Ski mastered the independent hustle without any label. Master P had a big plan, which was to pull up to every hood in California and give mixtapes to the guy with the nicest car. That's because he knew that everyone would imitate the guy with the most money. If they heard him playing his music, they might think that it's the coolest thing to listen to. And
if you're struggling with panic attacks, this may be the most
like I said, I imitated all this. I come from motherfucking selling my CDs from before I even had a car. We fresh out the back pocket.
This plan worked out very well. He even had his brothers and sisters,
you know, trapping. You know what I'm saying, moving around from hood to hood, place to place, selling the CDs. Like, I come from that era. We did all that for years. That's how we got down all the way up into this new age to where they stopped selling CDs and all that type of shit. But we sold our CDs, movies, blanks, DVDs, like all type of shit. You know what I'm saying? Nigga got it in.
Moved to Richmond as well to record albums together. And Master P fully immersed himself into the culture. You can even see him wearing Richmond hats in his music videos. His debut album sold over 100,000 copies. But he wasn't content with the local success. Working with the West Coast artists was great, but they already had their own hustle. And P knew that he could reach higher goals. So in 1995, he returned to New Orleans with a master plan, no pun intended. He knew that in the South, his music style needed to change. On the West Coast, it was all about the flow and what you're saying. For example, people wanted to hear the game
like
from Too Short, E40, or M-Banks. But in the South, it's the beat that matters first. People down South want the song to make them feel a certain way, and then they'll listen to the lyrics later. And everything revolves around what's being played at the club. But Master P's first move was controversial. He signed a rapper named Soulja Slim, which surprised many people in New Orleans. That's because Soulja Slim was from the Magnolia Project, which are rivals with Master P's Calliope project. But Master P was all about business, and the street politics didn't matter one bit. And that's when No Limit began to rise and take over the industry. The Calliope was the new Compton. Everyone in rap was excited about what the Calliope had in store next. Other No Limit rappers like Mystical began taking over as well. People really felt the New Orleans environment through the music. It became hip-hop's new up-and-coming city because of No Limit. But the Third Ward wasn't going to let them be the only stars. And that's when the Magnolia decided to get in on the music as well. Brian Williams, also known as Birdman, had already started Cash Money Records. But at this time, it was a much smaller operation. Their main focus was on a local Third Ward group called UNLV. The group consisted of Yellow Boy and Lil Ya, who were two of the most respected members of the Magnolia Project. But these guys weren't business-minded like Master P. They still had one foot in the streets. And their main rival happened to be No Limit's Mystical, who they dissed in a song called Drag 'Em in the River. However, this beef was not their main issue. In typical Louisiana fashion, internal affairs took the front seat. And that takes us to 1997. UNLV and Birdman began bumping heads when the group notices that they haven't been properly paid for their music. So they go ahead and hire lawyers to prove that Birdman owes them a lot of money. But instead of bringing on a lawsuit, they decide to try intimidation.
That's what happens when you don't know
during
the business.
the video shoot in the Magnolia, Yellow Boy shows up and walks up to Birdman. But Yellow Boy wasn't done just yet. His point wasn't getting through. So later on that day, he goes looking for Birdman again. But after hours of searching, he finally gives up. And he decides to head to Birdman's New Orleans East mansion. He pulls into the driveway and notices that nobody is home. But for whatever reason, he decides to walk in front of the home, and bam! When Birdman got the news of this, he was not pleased.
That's not true.
But he also wasn't
Yellow Boy had shot up. He did shoot up the house, the car and the house.
That's because he was rolling with some of the most notorious guys in New Orleans. Most importantly, his brother named Terrence Williams, also known as Gangsta. And this guy might just be the most cold-blooded we have ever seen. Gangsta was a feared name in New Orleans, known as a guy you want to avoid pissing off at all costs. And once he got news of what Yellow Boy did to his brother, he was ready to handle business. Well, on the night of April 5th, 1997, Yellow Boy was found lying in his car in the Magnolia Projects. And instantly, all eyes were pointed in one direction, Terrence Gangsta Williams. And not long after, he would go down for it. However, in New Orleans, the law operates way differently than anywhere else. The city of New Orleans has what's known as the 60-day rule. If NOPD can't present a witness testimony within 60 days of a crime, all charges will be dropped. And that's allegedly what occurred in this case. And this rule is why almost all crimes went unsolved in New Orleans during this period. On top of this, NOPD was notorious for turning a blind eye on what was going on. But when it involved higher profile cases, the feds would take over. And for the year of 1997, the feds tapped the phone of Terrence Williams. And later that year, he was arrested for all kinds of things, a list that covers pages and pages of events. And in 2002, he was officially sentenced to 240 years. After this, he was seen as a legend for staying solid and defending Cash Money at all costs. But this turned out not to be the case, which you'll see later on. So let's fast forward to 2002. Both Cash Money and No Limit have taken over the industry. Cash Money's Juvenile came out of the gates on fire with 400 Degrees, and Lil Wayne came out with The Block Is Hot. And for No Limit, Soulja Slim and Mystikal were seeing success as well. It's safe to say that this was the New Orleans prime era, and many people wondered why No Limit and Cash Money never collaborated. They were from the same city and the same ward, so what was the issue? But the world didn't know that the Magnolia and Calliope were arch rivals. In fact, it was one of the worst in American history, where things were going down on a daily basis. Both Birdman and Master P would talk about it in an interview.
What was the situation back then?
It was just that I didn't.
Somebody, they thought Terrence Gangsta Williams had killed Master P.
Get along with some of the people he ran with.
Yeah.
You know, some of the people that was with Cash Money, like I told you, you know, all your friends ain't my friends. I salute them for what they done, but if I don't get along with the people you get along with, you know, I'm not gonna do business with you. That's just it. He probably felt the same way. He probably didn't get along with some of the people that I ran with.
Yeah.
You know, it was two different communities, two different hoods, and
two different projects, right?
Two different projects.
Okay, you were from?
I was from the Calliope, and they was from the Magnolia.
Okay.
I mean, back then we was young. You know, we ain't rock with that. That ain't rock with us. So that's just how that was. We ain't see eye to eye with nothing. You know, it was really me and him. A lot of artists got along with each other. Yeah. It was more of me and him. Maybe he didn't like who I rock with. That's where I come from. But it was more personal with me and him. We didn't see eye to eye, period.
They didn't have to get along or collaborate, but they also didn't want to end each other's careers. And that's a big reason why nothing took place between the labels. However, living in New Orleans, every day could be your last, and that reality caused many of the guys to be on edge. Especially Master P's younger brother, Corey Miller, also known as C Murder. And as the streets of New Orleans tell it, his nickname was well earned. And that takes us to January 12th, 2000.
See how different New Orleans niggas rock their goals compared to how Florida niggas rock their mouth full of goals? Like, it just seemed like a different whole swag to it, you know what I'm saying?
2002. C Murder is booked for a walkthrough at the Platinum Club in Harvey, Louisiana. This is a suburb located right next to New Orleans, and although they're very close, the two cities are completely different, especially when it comes to the law. Harvey is located in Jefferson Parish, which is one of the strictest and tough-on-crime counties in the country, and they definitely do not have a 60-day rule, so the New Orleans people know to be on their best behavior when they're in this county. Well, at the nightclub, a 16-year-old boy named Steve Thomas walks up to C Murder looking for an autograph. However, an argument breaks out between the two, and that's when C Murder steps back and bang. On February 28, 2002, Corey Miller was arrested at his Baton Rouge home. And here is where things get interesting. The DA brought in 2 witnesses that claimed to have seen him do it, but Corey's lawyers brought in 9 witnesses that testified that he didn't do it. But usually, in order for that to help you out, they have to say who did do it, and that never happened. Ultimately, Corey took it to trial, pleading his innocence the whole time. However, on August 10th, 2009, he was convicted after the jury voted 10-2, which in Louisiana is enough to convict. So Corey Miller received a life sentence. But Master P was not going to let his brother go down like that, so just 17 days later, a retrial was demanded. That's because one of the jurors came out and said that she was pressured by others on the jury. The 20-year-old Xavier pharmacy student claims to have been so ridiculed during deliberation that she even vomited. She claims that she folded under pressure and returned a guilty verdict against her will. So on this basis, the lawyers would ask for a retrial, and it would be granted. But unfortunately, the conviction was confirmed once again by a jury in December of 2011. But Master P wasn't done just yet. In 2013, they would take the case to the Supreme Court, which also ruled him guilty on February 19th, 2013. So that was 3 attempts, but did you think they were done trying? No way. In April 2014, Corey's lawyers would ask for a post-conviction relief application. But once again, this was rejected by Jefferson Parish courts. Oh, did you think this was the end? No way. Except this time they might be working with something. In April 2018, the 2 original witnesses came out and admitted that they lied about seeing Corey Miller do it. They claimed that Jefferson Parish told them to lie and promised them favors in return. Who knows how this will turn out this time? But in order to continue the story, let's head all the way back to 2003. This is when more bad news would come out of No Limit. They had just lost Corey Miller to the system and couldn't possibly afford any more losses. Well, Soulja Slim had become the star of No Limit, especially after his 2001 album. But things would come crashing down on November 26, 2003. Soulja Slim decides to go visit his mom in the Gentilly neighborhood of New Orleans. This is a suburban neighborhood where you would never expect anything to happen. So Soulja Slim casually pulls into his mom's driveway. But right there is a man named Jarrell Smith. Bang! Jarrell Smith went down at a New Year's Eve party in New Orleans, and what they found in his possession matched the scene of Soulja Slim, and it also matched 3 others from the Magnolia as well: Spencer Smith Jr., Mandel Duplessis, and Terry Brock. However, no witnesses were presented for 60 days, and Jarrell Smith was ultimately let free, and this reignited a rivalry in the Third Ward, and this next generation is just as bad, if not worse, than the previous one. The new New Orleans has completely changed though, especially after the hurricane. But I'll keep all that for part 2, so let me know in the comments if you guys want to see a part 2, the new generation of the Third Ward. But before I conclude the video, major news broke out just last month. Birdman's brother Terrence Gangsta Williams was released from his 240-year sentence. Many people were shocked and curious why. Well, it came out that he was working with the feds the entire time and gave up names of guys in the Magnolia who committed crimes. Apparently, Birdman told Wack 100 that Terrence isn't his brother, which is not true. But I guess that's his way of saying that he is not accepted anymore. Let me know in the comments who you guys think was better, Cash Money or No Limit. And that's gonna do it for this episode of Show Stories. Make sure to leave a like
and it had a longer run. Still going, really. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I was say I'm a No Limit Cash Money fan. I looked up the Stunner coming up, you know what I'm saying? A lot of his business ways and shit, just being a street nigga to do business and never been a fool. I respect it. If y'all want to talk about it, let's talk about it in the comments. Like, comment, subscribe.
Just do it for the bar, just do it for the bar, just do it.